My girlfriend lied about her job while I paid every bill, so I packed quietly and vanished from her life without warning, leaving only regret. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and when I met my girlfriend, I honestly believed I'd finally found someone who understood what partnership was supposed to look like. She talked a lot about teamwork, about building something together, about how relationships were supposed to feel safe and honest. I remember her saying, "I just need a little time to get on my feet," and I believed her without hesitation. She told me she was hardworking but stuck in a rough phase. Her job situation was unstable, always on the edge of improving, always one opportunity away from turning around. I didn't question it. Life is hard, and I'd been there before. So when we moved in together, it felt natural for me to step up. I paid the rent. I covered utilities. I handled groceries, subscriptions, random emergencies, everything. At the time, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like love. She made sure to tell me how grateful she was. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she'd say, looking at me like I was saving her. She called me dependable. Mature. Different from other guys. Every compliment made the sacrifices feel lighter, like I was doing the right thing. I started seeing myself as the stable one, the anchor that kept us afloat. There were nights I came home exhausted, sitting at the kitchen table with bills spread out, the hum of the fridge filling the silence. She'd curl up next to me and say, "This won't be forever. I promise." And I believed that promise more than anything. I told myself this was just a temporary imbalance, the kind couples get through together. I trusted her completely. I never checked, never verified, never doubted her stories. Transparency felt automatic, like something you don't have to ask for when love is real. I thought honesty was the foundation we were standing on. Looking back now, I realize how calm everything felt right before it started to crack. It didn't happen all at once. There was no conversation where we sat down and agreed that I'd handle everything. It just shifted. One bill at a time, one quiet expectation after another, until I realized I was carrying the entire weight by myself. Rent was already mine, but then utilities followed. Groceries. Internet. Even little things, like household supplies, somehow defaulted to me. Whenever I brought it up gently, she already had an explanation ready. My paycheck was late again, or "they messed up my hours this month," or "I'm waiting to hear back from HR." The reasons changed, but the outcome never did. I'd nod, say it was okay, and pull out my card. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who keeps score, the one who makes money feel transactional. I started budgeting more carefully, cutting back on things I enjoyed. No more eating out for myself. Fewer nights with friends. Meanwhile, she never seemed stressed about money. She'd grab what she wanted at the store, talk about plans, mention things she wanted to do once things settled. It created this quiet imbalance I didn't know how to name. When I tried to have a real conversation, she'd sigh and say, "Do you not trust me?" That question always stopped me cold. Of course I trusted her. That was the whole point. She'd follow it with, "I already feel bad enough about this," and suddenly I was comforting her for a problem that was draining me. Late at night, I'd lie awake listening to her breathing beside me, staring at the ceiling, mentally adding numbers that never worked out. I told myself relationships weren't always equal, that this was just my turn to carry more. Love meant patience. Love meant endurance. At least, that's what I kept repeating. Still, a quiet exhaustion settled into my chest. I felt stretched thin, but I convinced myself it was normal. Temporary. Necessary. I just didn't realize how invisible I was becoming in my own relationship. The first red flags were so small they barely registered. Little things that felt too petty to bring up, too insignificant to risk an argument over. She'd mention work casually, but the details never stayed consistent. One week she talked about a demanding supervisor, the next she avoided naming anyone at all. When I asked what time she got off, the answer always shifted. "It depends," she'd say. You know how unpredictable it is. I started noticing how often she was home. Too often. I'd come back from long shifts and find her on the couch, phone in hand, telling me she'd had a slow day or that work was cut short again. When I asked what she actually did that day, she'd shrug and change the subject. The conversations felt slippery, like I could never grab onto anything solid. Anytime money came up in more detail, her tone changed. Her shoulders would tense. Her answers would shorten. "Why are you interrogating me?" she snapped once when I asked about her paycheck schedule. That word, interrogating, stuck with me. I wasn't accusing her of anything. I was just tired. Still, I swallowed the discomfort. I told myself stress made people weird. That not everyone liked talking about work. That I was projecting my own anxiety onto her. I didn't want to become suspicious. I didn't want to turn into someone who doubted the person he loved. At night, when the apartment was quiet, I replayed conversations in my head. The pauses. The vague answers. The way she'd reassure me without actually explaining anything. My gut would tighten, then I'd force myself to relax. "You're overthinking," I told myself. "She's not that kind of person." Trust became my excuse for silence. I chose peace over clarity. Every time my instincts whispered that something was off, I drowned them out with logic and loyalty. I told myself love meant giving someone the benefit of the doubt, even when doubt was the only thing growing. What I didn't realize then was that denial isn't neutral. It isn't harmless. It's a decision, and I was making it over and over, right as the ground under me was starting to shift. Somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like we were building something together and started feeling like I was holding everything up by myself. It wasn't just the money anymore. It was the planning, the reassurance, the emotional weight of keeping things okay. If something went wrong, I fixed it. If she was stressed, I calmed her down. If the future felt uncertain, I was the one expected to sound confident. I remember sitting at the kitchen table one evening, laptop open, juggling bills and upcoming expenses while the room smelled faintly of burnt coffee. She was on the couch scrolling through her phone, legs tucked under her, completely relaxed. I asked, "Hey, can we talk about next month's expenses?" "Without even looking up," she said, "Can we not do this right now?" That was the end of it. Friends started making comments. "You always pay, huh?" one of them joked at dinner. I laughed it off, but it stuck with me. Even my tone had changed. I was tired all the time, quieter, more withdrawn. When I tried to explain how overwhelmed I felt, she'd sigh and say, "I thought you were stronger than this." That one hurt more than I expected. Every conversation somehow turned into me apologizing. I was sorry for bringing up money. Sorry for stressing her out. Sorry for making things heavy. She framed my exhaustion as negativity, my questions as mistrust. And somehow, I accepted that version of reality. I started second-guessing my own needs, wondering if I really was asking for too much. At night, lying beside her, I felt this strange loneliness. The apartment was warm, familiar, filled with our shared things, but I felt completely alone inside it. I missed feeling like someone had my back. I missed feeling chosen instead of useful. Still, I told myself this was just a rough phase. That real relationships went through imbalances. That if I just held on a little longer, things would even out. I didn't realize how much of myself I was slowly giving up just to keep everything from falling apart. And I definitely didn't realize how close I was to finding out the truth I'd been avoiding. The moment that changed everything wasn't dramatic. There was no screaming, no confrontation, no obvious betrayal. It was quiet, accidental, and almost easy to miss, which somehow made it worse. I was in the hallway one afternoon, half-dressed and late for work, when I heard her voice from the bedroom. She was on the phone, speaking in a tone I didn't recognize. Lower. Sharper. Almost rehearsed. "No, I told you I'm not doing that anymore," she said, pacing. I already explained my situation. I stopped moving, my shirt still in my hands. She laughed softly, then added, "I've got someone covering things right now." Someone. When she noticed me, she jumped. Her face flushed, and she ended the call immediately. I asked who she was talking to, keeping my voice calm even though my chest felt tight. Just work stuff, she said too quickly. It's complicated. That word again. Complicated. It felt like a wall instead of an explanation. Later that night, I tried to circle back. I asked what she meant earlier, why she sounded stressed about work when she told me everything was fine. Her entire demeanor shifted. She crossed her arms and said, "Why are you listening to my calls?" The accusation landed hard. I hadn't been snooping. I hadn't been trying to catch her in anything. But suddenly, I was the problem. She told me I was being paranoid. That I was reading into nothing. That she already felt judged enough without me piling on. "I thought you trusted me," she said quietly, like a warning. I apologized, even though I didn't fully understand what I was apologizing for. But that night, sleep didn't come. Her words replayed in my head, mixing with that unfamiliar tone I'd heard earlier. The puzzle pieces didn't fit, and for the first time, I stopped forcing them to. I didn't argue. I didn't push. I just started paying attention. And once I did, I realized how much of her story only worked if I never looked too closely at it. I didn't go looking for the truth out of anger. It came from exhaustion. From that quiet need to understand why nothing ever added up no matter how hard I tried to believe. One evening, while she was in the shower, her phone lit up on the counter. I wasn't snooping at first, I just glanced. The notification wasn't from a coworker. It wasn't from a boss. It was from someone asking, "So are you still not working this month?" My stomach dropped. I stood there frozen, the bathroom fan humming, steam creeping under the door. When she came out, wrapped in a towel, I asked calmly, "Can you tell me where you actually work right now?" She stared at me for a beat too long. Then she sighed like I was inconveniencing her and said, "Why does it matter?" That answer cracked something open. Over the next few days, I stopped asking questions and started connecting dots. Timelines didn't match. Stories contradicted each other. Old messages surfaced that didn't align with the version of her life she'd been selling me. Slowly, painfully, the truth took shape. The job she talked about, the instability, the delayed paychecks, the constant excuses, it wasn't real the way she said it was. She hadn't been struggling to get back on her feet. She had chosen not to work. While I was budgeting, stressing, and draining my savings to keep us afloat, she was letting me do it. Comfortably. Deliberately. Every thank you, every "I'll make it up to you," every reassurance had been layered over a lie that stretched back months. Maybe longer. I remember sitting alone in the living room, the lights off, the city noise leaking through the windows. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from humiliation. I felt used in a way I didn't have words for yet. Confrontation crossed my mind, but it didn't bring relief. It felt pointless. Because the worst part wasn't the money. It was realizing she'd looked me in the eyes every day and decided I didn't deserve the truth. And in that moment, I understood something terrifyingly clear: nothing I said would make this better. After that realization, something inside me went completely silent. I didn't explode. I didn't confront her. I just shut down. I went through the motions like a ghost in my own life. I'd wake up, go to work, come home, and sit there listening to her talk about her day, stories I now knew were mostly fiction. Every word felt heavier than the last. At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. Every time I defended her to friends. Every time I told myself I was lucky to have someone who appreciated me. The embarrassment burned deeper than anger. I felt stupid for believing so easily, for confusing manipulation with love. My savings were nearly gone, my energy was gone, and whatever confidence I had left was barely holding together. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and didn't care. She still laughed, still made plans, still acted like everything was normal. Once, she asked, "You've been really quiet lately. Are you okay?" I almost laughed. I told her I was just tired. She nodded and went back to her phone. The lowest point came one evening when I opened my banking app and realized I had less than I'd ever had as an adult. Years of discipline wiped out in months. I sat on the bathroom floor, back against the tub, the cold tile seeping through my clothes. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't take a full breath. I wasn't just broke financially, I felt broken emotionally. I thought about confronting her, about demanding answers, about making her explain herself. But the idea exhausted me. I already knew the truth. Hearing excuses wouldn't give me back my dignity. I realized that staying meant accepting this version of my life forever being lied to, drained, and slowly erased. That night, while she slept peacefully beside me, I stared at her face in the dark and felt something settle in my chest. Not anger. Not sadness. Clarity. And once that clarity arrived, I knew there was no going back, only a decision I hadn't told her about yet. Once I made the decision, something strange happened inside me. The chaos stopped. The anger faded. Even the sadness dulled into something quieter and more controlled. I didn't feel dramatic or vengeful. I felt focused. Like someone who had finally accepted the truth and was done negotiating with it. I stopped bringing things up. No more questions. No more late-night conversations about money or the future. She seemed relieved by the silence, like she thought the storm had passed. "See," she said one night, smiling. I knew things would calm down. I nodded and said nothing. Privately, I started separating my life from hers piece by piece. I opened a new bank account during my lunch break, hands steady as I signed the paperwork. I redirected my paycheck. I gathered important documents, passport, birth certificate, old pay stubs, and hid them in my backpack. At night, I'd lie next to her and mentally inventory what was actually mine. The apartment felt different now. Smaller. Temporary. I noticed details I'd ignored before: the scuff marks on the walls, the hum of traffic outside, the way the air felt stale when the windows stayed closed too long. Everything about the space reminded me that I was paying for a life that wasn't really shared. She kept talking about plans. Vacations we'd take. Things she wanted to buy once money wasn't so tight. Each time, I felt a tight, hollow sensation in my chest. She was still dreaming with my resources, completely unaware that the ground under her was already gone. I packed slowly, quietly. One drawer at a time. Things she wouldn't notice missing. I kept my tone neutral, my routine unchanged. The hardest part wasn't the logistics, it was pretending nothing had changed when everything had. There were moments I almost broke. Moments I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to make her see what she'd done to me. But I stayed quiet. I reminded myself that explanations were for people who respected the truth. By the end of that week, everything was ready. She still thought we were stable. She still thought I wasn't going anywhere. And that was exactly why she never saw it coming. The day I left felt strangely ordinary. No dramatic music, no final argument, no heavy goodbye scene. I woke up before my alarm, the room still dark, the air cool against my skin. She was asleep beside me, breathing slow and even, completely at peace. I watched her for a moment, trying to feel something sharp enough to stop me. I didn't. I moved quietly. I'd already packed most of my things over the week, so there wasn't much left. Just a duffel bag, my backpack, and the last few items I actually cared about. Every sound felt louder than it was: the zipper sliding shut, the soft click of my phone screen lighting up, the floor creaking under my steps. She didn't stir. Before leaving, I stood in the doorway and looked around the apartment one last time. The couch I paid for. The table where I balanced bills late at night. The walls that had heard my doubts but never answered back. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like evidence. I logged into our shared accounts and ended them calmly, one by one. Subscriptions canceled. My name removed. Payments stopped. I forwarded my mail, locked my credit, and sent a short message to my landlord explaining I was moving out immediately. No drama. Just clean lines and final decisions. At the door, my hand hovered over the knob. For a split second, I wondered if I should leave a note. Something clear. Something fair. But the truth was, I'd already explained myself for months. I'd just been doing it silently, with my money and my patience. I didn't owe her one more word. The hallway outside felt colder, emptier. The elevator ride down was slow, every floor ticking past like a countdown. When the doors opened, sunlight hit my face, and I stepped out carrying everything I had left of that life. I didn't block her number. I didn't turn off my phone. I just walked away. And as I drove off, I knew it would only be a matter of time before she realized what I'd really taken with me. I didn't even make it to the end of the block before my phone started vibrating. One missed call. Then another. Then a string of texts piling up on the screen. Where are you? Did you go to work early? This isn't funny. I kept driving. By the time I pulled into a gas station, my phone looked like it was panicking on my behalf. Calls from her. Messages getting longer, sharper. The rent didn't go through. My card is declining. What did you do? I sat in the car with the engine idling, watching the numbers tick up on the pump, feeling something I hadn't felt in months: control. The moment my financial support disappeared, her reality collapsed. The stability she'd been standing on vanished overnight, and she had no idea how to replace it. Mutual friends started reaching out later that day. She's freaking out. She says you just disappeared. Did something happen? I didn't reply. I let the silence speak for me. Apparently, without my paycheck propping things up, her stories started unraveling fast. She missed payments. She made excuses. People asked questions she couldn't dodge the way she dodged mine. That night, she sent a message that was less angry and more desperate. Please just talk to me. I don't understand what's going on. I stared at the screen for a long time. Part of me felt guilty. Another part felt vindicated. But the strongest feeling was clarity. This was what consequences looked like: quiet, immediate, and unavoidable. She had never prepared for a life where I wasn't there to catch her. She'd built her comfort on the assumption that I would always stay, always pay, always forgive. Walking away didn't make me cruel. It made me honest. As the messages kept coming, I finally turned my phone face down. For once, I wasn't the one scrambling to fix things. And somewhere behind the panic in her words, I knew she was starting to understand exactly why I had left. A few days passed before the tone of her messages changed. The anger burned itself out first. The accusations stopped. The frantic calls slowed. What replaced them was something quieter and heavier. One night, my phone lit up with a single, long message. No missed calls. No demands. Just words. She wrote about being scared. About not knowing how things had spiraled so fast. Then, halfway through, the excuses began to crack. She admitted she'd put things off. That she'd leaned on me too much. She never used the word lied, but she danced around it, circling the truth without touching it. I didn't think it would go this far, she wrote. I thought we had time. That sentence hit me harder than anything else. Time. As if my money, my energy, my trust had just been something she was borrowing indefinitely. As if I was a buffer between her and reality, not a person quietly breaking under the weight. She asked why I hadn't talked to her. Why I hadn't given her a chance to explain. You didn't even say goodbye, she wrote, like that was the real betrayal. I could almost hear her voice reading it, that familiar mix of softness and self-pity. For a moment, my fingers hovered over the screen. I imagined typing everything out. Every sacrifice. Every lie. Every night I lay awake feeling invisible. But the longer I stared at her message, the clearer it became. She didn't want the truth. She wanted relief. She wanted me back in the role I'd played so well, the one who fixed things, absorbed the damage, and stayed quiet. Reading her words didn't bring satisfaction. It brought confirmation. Leaving without warning wasn't cruelty, it was the only way I could leave without being pulled back in. If I responded, even once, I knew the cycle would start again. So I locked my phone, set it down, and took a deep breath. For the first time, I didn't feel responsible for her emotions. And as the silence stretched on, I knew the hardest part of this wasn't ending things, it was finally choosing not to explain myself anymore. In the weeks after I disappeared, my life felt unfamiliar in the quietest way. No constant anxiety. No background dread when my phone buzzed. No mental math running nonstop in my head. I stayed with a friend at first, sleeping on a couch that smelled like detergent and old coffee, staring at the ceiling and letting the silence settle into my bones. It wasn't peace right away. There were moments guilt crept in, sharp and unexpected. I'd catch myself wondering if I'd been too harsh, too sudden. Then I'd remember the nights on the bathroom floor, the drained accounts, the way I'd been reduced to a resource instead of a partner. And the guilt would loosen its grip. I rebuilt slowly. I tracked my spending again, not out of panic, but control. I cooked cheap meals, took long walks after work, and started sleeping through the night. The city felt different when I wasn't carrying someone else's lies on my back. Even my reflection looked steadier, like I was finally occupying my own body again. Occasionally, I'd hear updates through mutual friends. She was struggling. She was trying to figure things out. She told people she never saw it coming. That part used to sting, how invisible my breaking point had been to her. But over time, it stopped mattering. Her confusion wasn't my responsibility anymore. I realized something important during that period. I didn't leave to punish her. I left to save myself. Silence wasn't revenge, it was self-respect. Walking away without a final argument was the first boundary I'd ever enforced without apologizing for it. I used to think closure came from confrontation, from hearing the other person admit what they did. Now I know better. Closure came the moment I chose not to beg for honesty from someone committed to avoiding it. I don't hate her. I don't wish her harm. She's a chapter one learned from, not one I carry. I finally understand that love without truth isn't love, it's exploitation dressed up as comfort. And the quiet life I'm building now? It's the loudest proof that leaving was the right choice.